Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share the following contemplation with you this morning. The old God divides man, but the God within unites all. An earnest search for the truth of who you are yields the freedom of oneness. Through meditation, we can realize who we have always been and will always be. So that's the contemplation that I want to share with you today. And as I was reviewing this contemplative focus myself, I went through my own history of being exposed to a doctrine, a religious doctrine, early on in life, and I didn't know whether it was real or not, but that was the context of part of my upbringing. And so I went along with it as best I could, but eventually I broke away from it because it was not answering some fundamental questions that, for whatever reasons, I continued to ask with myself. And that was, what's it all about? Why am I here? What is the real truth? And how can I know the truth? Instead of believing in something. Because I could see that there was a lot of divisiveness in the world between different religious belief systems and so forth, and to me that was kind of like contrary to the essence of what they were all saying. And so anyway, I've since then, of course, ventured into meditation and exploring and discovering who I am and what life is all about here. What's really happening with the human experience, and why does it exist? I mean, what's the point of it? So, one of the breakthroughs that occurred with me early on in life was simply accepting and realizing the truth that I did not know. When I realized and accepted that fact, that none of my upbringing, no books, nothing I could read, nothing I could hear, could actually validate experientially what it was saying and what it was claiming. So that was always a stopping point for me. I read a lot of books. I even explored atheism and agnostics and so forth to see if I could find a clue. But of course that never happened. And there's also another component to all of this too, and that's the history of this kind of self-identification based on separation, based on we are here, there's a God up there, and somehow we're supposed to live according to certain rules or we are not accepted. And this long story that people have been buying into and still buy into has wreaked havoc among human beings. Many wars have been fought over this and so forth, and the cruelty between people over this kind of a belief system. You would think that by now we would have progressed beyond that. But whatever the case may be, there is a way. There is a way for anyone to validate or invalidate any belief they hold, and that's by going in. You go in and you ask yourself, you meditate, you go beyond your thinking mind, which is where belief systems live, and see if there's any kind of validation. And if you're earnest in this, if you really are open to the answer, eventually it will come in some form, in some way. You will receive a validation one way or the other. And that's usually an experiential validation, something that is beyond what you could ever think of, beyond anything you would call normal, something that's paranormal, something that's beyond what the senses tell us and what the senses say is real, and so forth and so on. But we know now through quantum physics and so forth that what we see as real isn't really what we see at all. It's there when you look really, really close, which we have now finally developed the tools to do this with, there's nothing there. And when you, even the atom now, when they look at the atom, what they see is not miniature planets revolving around a nucleus. What they see is they see aspects of what constitutes an atom coming into being and then going out of being, coming in and going out. It's a fluctuation that's happening, and which is really in alignment with the wisdom traditions that I am familiar with, wherein creation comes out of nothing and goes back into nothing, because something is a manifest reality. It has to be something that has densified itself enough to where the sensory apparatus that human beings use, the eyes, the ears, the nose, and so forth, the touch, has to be able to interact with something in order to have that reality work. And so for something to densify, for nothingness to densify into something, is a process. And it's a process that's renewing itself moment to moment to moment, very quickly. Many, many times in the short time I've been speaking, this has been happening. So it's constantly being created, being discreated, recreating, and so forth, updating itself and moving ahead. It's evolving itself, in other words. It's not a what do you call it? It's not frozen. It keeps moving and it keeps changing, and there's no way for us to really predict what, as far as I know anyway, as to what might show up next. So we live our lives as human beings, and we begin life knowing nothing, and if we have the appropriate parenting and so forth to take care of us as we are vulnerable and dependent upon that kind of support, then we start learning to interact. We start learning to define things. We start learning to define ourselves, largely on the basis of what our parents and teachers and our peers tell us, and how our interactions affect us. And then we create some definitions ourselves, and we accept many definitions about life and what it is and ourselves, because of the authority that we project onto people who take care of us as we're growing up, and which is a form of honoring, really. But at some point in time, some people start looking further. They notice that there's some things missing in the reality that they have come to believe in, and the reality that they experience doesn't seem to be as good as they would like it to be, maybe. And so they question and they go inside, and when they do, when people start to meditate as a way to try to augment their life and make their life somewhat more peaceful, somewhat more meaningful, somewhat more elevated, this is when there's a major turning point in any individual's life, and they start to discover. They have breakthrough moments where suddenly an aspect of themselves shows up that they could not comprehend with the thinking mind or with the senses. And when that happens, it's a breakthrough that has a huge impact on any individual, as they have had on me in my experiences through life. And their impact is so large and so strong and so wonderful, so uplifting, that there is a validation that the basis for what we have come to believe through our thinking mind and our senses, which is basically that we are separate from each other and everything around us, is not true. It's an illusion. It's something that our senses tell us, our thinking mind accepts and builds upon that belief that there is separation. It creates that experience of separation because we're focused outward. We look outside, we see other people, we see other things, but we don't think to go inside to see what might be there, which is basically one of the fundamental principles of meditation is that there is an exterior and an interior. And if you only ever focus on the exterior, you're not balanced. This is what is meant by balance in that meditation traditions is that you have to balance out the experience that you're generating from the focus that you keep. And this is widely known now. What you focus upon is what you become. It's kind of like a standard rule, and more people are becoming aware of this now. It's true within the thinking mind and the senses, and it's also true beyond the mind and the senses that we are used to using and experiencing. So if you go inside, you meditate, and you spend enough time, and you do this every day, gradually you build up more and more of this balance, and you open up to perceptions and realizations that the mind cannot know. You go beyond your mind. You go outside of the confines of the senses and the thinking mind and the beliefs that you have stored up in yourself, and you discover that there is so much more to life, and that what you discover beyond the mind is so much more elevating and so much more freeing, because it doesn't, your existence, in other words, no longer depends upon the relationships that you have had in the same way. They still depend upon it in terms of your human experience, of course, but you're not separate from anybody or anything, so it's all one existence, it's all one life, and we're all sharing that one life and that one existence. And how we share it and to what degree we share it will be the degree of fulfillment that we find in ourselves. We generate that experience by opening up more and more and more as the spirit that we are and that everything is, as opposed to the individual that we are, the limited individual, the ego, the person who is constantly struggling to be accepted, the person who has to succeed, the person who has to compete for survival. That person is the ego, and that person is the result of the limited perspective that comes from being locked into the thinking mind and the five senses and the body and all that, and not going beyond it. So in this day and age, it appears anyway that there's more and more people who are breaking away from that limitation. They're exploring, they're opening up to things that, because they're in pursuit of answers. They want to know, and that's one way to do it, is to break away from the norm and to pursue an investigation, you might call it, on your own, to find out what, if anything, is there, what shows up, what can you discover. And those who do, and those who are earnest in their pursuit, which simply means that you do this daily, you do it regularly, and you do it with an intention to be open to the possibilities that may show up for you in terms of what lies beyond what you can see, what you can hear, what you experience as a physical reality. So I've started this many, many years ago, and had a lot of difficulty in the very beginning years of my pursuit of this. It wasn't consistent, and oftentimes my efforts to meditate did not yield much result. But here and there, because I persisted, I had experiences that validated what I was doing. I would have breakthrough moments where I would experience myself as source, as the consciousness that is all and everything in some way or another. And those experiences validated the pursuit, even though it was not a well-structured pursuit, even though I still didn't know the mechanics of consciousness. I didn't know the mechanics of how it all worked. But eventually I did. Eventually I did find a teacher, and I went to my teacher and learned about balance. I learned about the mechanics of consciousness and how it works and how it doesn't work, and how you create your reality, and how you can choose what kind of a reality you wish to have by maintaining a very firm focus on the truth of who you are. And when you meditate daily and you maintain that practice for years and years, that becomes your new you. That becomes something that just becomes normal. And that meditation experience eventually becomes your normal experience. You don't sit down to meditate, you're always meditating. You still sit to meditate because that will take you deeper. But you experience a meditative perspective on life 24/7. And that's a beautiful thing that anyone can experience if they just pursue it and give themselves to it. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. The old God versus the new God. The God that is separate from us, and the God that we are in us, in the sense that we are all the same consciousness that is all and everything. So I hope this has helped you out. I hope it excites you and gets you to explore more and more about who you are and what life is. So that's enough for today, and I will be back again next Monday to share another contemplation with you. Thank you.